for today's video, I thought I might just film like a really short video to do with mental health, and this is going to be on dissociation. And I just want to start off by saying, like, I haven't been diagnosed with a dissociative disorder. If you want to know what they are, you can just Google it, because I don't really want to go into detail about that. I don't have like a dissociative disorder like DID or any of those things, but I do struggle with dissociation just kind of on its own. And a lot of people who have mental health problems can struggle with this regardless of whether you have like an actual full-blown disorder of it. This is like very common if you've experienced any type of trauma, stressful events, just things like that in your life. So only like probably like the beginning of this year I started actually like going to therapy and stuff. So I realized now looking back that I've actually have experienced a lot of dissociation, especially when I was younger, but I didn't really know what it was because obviously I didn't know what dissociation was. No one had ever explained it to me, and I didn't know, and I thought it was kind of just like a normal thing. And I want to say, to start off with, so I'll explain what dissociating is, but like everyone kind of dissociates. Like, it's kind of like a normal thing. Like, it's kind of like when you're sitting there, like say you're just sitting here and then like you realize that you've zoned out for a few seconds, and then you kind of miss bits of the conversation, and like you kind of come back and you're like, oh, like say you're talking with a friend, you're kind of like, oh, like what were you talking about? Or when you're driving, you know, when you drive somewhere and you get there and you're like, oh, I don't really remember like driving here. It's kind of like your conscious mind having a break. You just naturally do this. I think everyone does this. But dissociation is when it gets to the point where it kind of lasts for longer periods and it becomes hard to like function, and it becomes like a problem, like it happens a lot, and you can't really control it. So I'm really talking from my own personal experience. I can't talk for anybody else, so this is just going to be my experience, and I'll just go through a couple of things. But I just want to start off with saying what dissociation is. So dissociation can include memory loss or amnesia of certain periods or information. I'm just reading off a website so I have it right, because I don't want to like give the wrong definition. It can be like a sense of being detached from yourself and emotions. It could be like depersonalization, where you don't really feel like you're yourself, and you don't really have a good idea of who you are. Like, your identity can be distorted. A perception of things around you can be unreal, so you might feel as though you're not really conscious and you're not really there. Mental health problems such as depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts and behaviors, they all can come along with this. And the inability to cope well with emotional stress. They're just a couple of things. I'm not going to read out a super in-depth thing, but that kind of gives you like a basic idea. So I suppose I'll just talk from my own personal experience. So pretty much, like, I'll kind of talk about when I was a bit younger, just to kind of give you an idea. So I did experience, well, I know this now, but I didn't know this obviously when I was experiencing it, but I remember probably being around, I don't even know what age. It would probably be like, I'm gonna say 8, but it could be younger, maybe like 7 or 8. And so yeah, at school I was just having like a lot of problems with like bullying and just things that were going on. And previously to this, I'd had quite a lot of I'm sorry, this shirt's quite tight. I'd had a lot of kind of traumatic stuff that was going on previously to this age, like probably like around when I was born, and like early, like being a toddler, like 1, 2, whatever. And so I think I already had a lot of like emotional distress and stuff there already. And so stuff was happening with school, and it was getting very bad, and certain people weren't dealing with it, and it just wasn't really a great situation. It was going on for a really long time. And this is when I first remember kind of experiencing a dissociative kind of state. And so because I just couldn't deal with the stress of going to school, because I was being quite severely bullied, it was very bad. I couldn't really get away from it, apart from obviously like going home, and I would cry every morning because I didn't want to go to school. Like, it was just It was really bad, and because it was going on, and I also had a lot of other emotional stuff that was going on that I didn't really realize at the time because I was very young, it kind of was quite hard. And I kind of would, before I knew what dissociation is, I would call this like distancing myself from what's going on around me or from like other people, because obviously I didn't know what dissociation was. I didn't know there was a term for it. So I would kind of just, I suppose like retreat into myself. So like I would just block out. This was a conscious thing, I'm gonna say right now. Like when I was this age, I was consciously making this choice. So I was consciously blocking out where I was. So say I was at school and I was under a lot of stress or emotional distress, I would just block out where I was or the people around me or what people were saying or what was going on, and I would like zone out for a bit because I just couldn't handle it and it was too much stress. And over the years, because of that deliberate thing, it became an automatic kind of response. So whenever I experience, it mainly happens with either really strong emotions or situations, or if I'm really anxious. When I have very severe anxiety, this becomes a really bad problem. That's mainly the time I deal with it now, but as a kid it was more of a place to kind of block out, like say people were fighting and it was really loud and it was really intense and I couldn't deal with it, so I would just, it's almost like you kind of go into a denial, like that didn't happen, and you kind of just push it away out of your memory kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of how it would go for me when I was younger. And it wasn't like that bad. Like I would be purposely removing myself from the environment, from the situation, from whatever was going on. But like I said, like as I got older, around the age of like 13, it became quite bad because I started to experience very, very bad anxiety and a lot of other mental health problems. And so this kind of made it quite difficult because the main thing was, I think what really set it off worse was because I moved schools. So I went to primary school, and then when I turned 13, I went to year 8, which was high school. That was before they changed all of that stuff, but I went to high school and I had to move schools and I didn't know anyone. And it was just like my mental health wasn't great anyway. So yeah, this kind of started happening like a lot more because I was developing, like, I've always had anxiety, but it was starting to get really like very based around like social interactions, so it would be really hard for me to socialize and talk with people and stuff. So it started to become more of a problem then. And then moving on from that, when I was about 14, which is when everything kind of hit the fan, that is when it became really bad and very uncontrollable. Like I could no longer control like myself blocking out, dissociating from situations. Say I was like under a lot of emotional distress, whatever, it would happen where I'd feel kind of like, it's really hard to explain it, but I know everybody experiences it differently. For me, it's kind of like I feel like I'm in a dream. It's like I feel like I'm like half asleep and I'm like in a dream and I can't really interact with things around me. So people could be talking, people could be asking me questions. I can't really hear what they're saying, and it's like just chopped up bits of information. And it's like my brain just kind of goes into meltdown and freeze and just dissociates and just distances myself because I can't cope. Usually this is induced by anxiety, like very severe anxiety. So that is what happens usually. An example of this, I'll actually say, so the other day I was already feeling really anxious because I had to go to an appointment and I was going on my own. Now, I never met the person I had the appointment with, and I had no idea where the place was either. This stressed me out. If you watch my learning difficulties videos, you know that I already have a lot of issues with memory and direction. This just makes it worse. So I was already stressed about that, and I left half an hour early from my house, and I had the GPS, and still with the GPS I couldn't find where I was going. So yeah, I got really lost, and I was like, by the time I eventually got there, I was so anxious. I was like crying, like I was trying to get myself together because I had to go to this appointment and blah blah blah. And by the time I got there, like this lady, the person I had the appointment with, she was like asking me questions and trying to explain to me like she was just trying to explain to me like how to get there for next time. Like she was just saying, oh, you know, like look out for this landmark or whatever it was, right? I don't really know. Can't really remember what she was saying. But because I was so anxious and I was just so out of it, I just couldn't even focus on anything. I had no idea what she was saying, and I was just very like, I can't talk right now. Like, yeah, it was quite bad. So yeah, that's mainly what would happen. Or if I'm with a large group of people, it tends to happen where like I'll literally just completely like zone off, and I'll just be like staring at something for like ages, and I will have missed like the whole conversation. And it's just like you kind of come back and you're like, oh, what is going on? Like you feel really confused. For me, it just feels like you're not really like attached to your conscious mind. Like you don't really feel really there or with it. You feel very like hazy, kind of out of it. You don't really feel, it's almost like blocking of emotions. You don't really feel anything because you're just in like this weird zombie state. I don't know, I'm sorry if I'm explaining this bad, but it's a really weird feeling, and it's a really horrible feeling. I don't like it at all. I hate it when it happens, especially when it happens in public, because it's like my eyesight starts going blurry, and I just can't like focus on anything. Everything is kind of just coming at me at once, and I just have to like shut it off, and that's my way of kind of dealing with it. This happens a lot with like, I don't really have much control of this anymore, like especially when I'm out in public or if I'm anxious. It just happens and I can't really do much about it. There are like grounding techniques and stuff, which is something I'm trying to work on at the moment, but yeah, it becomes quite difficult, and people can experience this in different lengths of time. So for me, it's not like I experience it for like a whole day. It might be maybe 15 minutes. It could be maybe a couple times in an hour. It really depends on what the situation is and if I'm able to get out of it, because if it is like, say I'm at a shop or something and it happens, I can have the opportunity to kind of like get out of there. But if it's like a situation where, say you're like sitting with I don't know, like a bunch of people, it makes it harder. The other time it happens a lot will be if like there's really intense emotion either coming from somebody else, so if somebody else is displaying really intense emotions, or if somebody's talking about like maybe like a traumatic situation, or somebody's talking about something really upsetting or something that I've experienced myself that was hard or something. It will usually happen where I'll kind of like shut off, and I don't really know what they've said, because it kind of triggers it. It's like I can't really deal with it. It's pretty much just like your brain's way of protecting yourself, because when you were put in situations where you experience really intense emotions, or like traumatic things, or if you're in danger or whatever it was, like your brain has to do this to kind of protect yourself, and so that is kind of the way. So yeah. It really just depends on people's personalities. It depends on situations. It depends on past traumas. It depends on a lot of things. So not everybody experiences this the same. Often, a lot of the times, I kind of experience like depersonalization, where I feel like I'm not myself. So like it's kind of like you look in the mirror and you look at yourself some days and you're like, I feel like I'm not. I don't know how to describe it. It's like you just don't feel like you're you. And you look at yourself and you're like, I look really different, and you can't pinpoint it. And I'll often ask other people, I'll be like to other people, do I look really weird today? I would do this a lot. I'll be like, do I look really weird today? Like, do I look different? Like, I'm kind of asking them, because to me, I feel like there's something off, and they're always like, no. So yeah, that can kind of come along with it as well. I'm not really sure why this occurs. I don't really know. I haven't really looked into that. It's just something that I do deal with, and I know other people who deal with it. So yeah, I'm just trying to find this other bit of information that I wanted to add. I just wanted to add that this does have like a lot of physical effects on me as well, because I usually get a really bad headache. And like I was saying before, like my eyesight goes very blurry and I feel like almost dizzy and sick. Like I'd feel very, I suppose the best feeling is kind of like you feel like you're in shock. It's like if you're put in a really like frightening situation where it's like suddenly you've been told this bit of information. It's almost like that, like you just kind of put into shock, I suppose, and you kind of just, I suppose, like zone out to deal with it. I can't find, I had this bit of thing written down and I can't find it, I'm sorry. Okay, this was actually the definition I was trying to find. Sorry, this explains it a lot better. So, dissociation is a psychological experience where people feel disconnected from their sensory experiences, sense of self. So that's what I was saying when sometimes I don't feel it myself, like when I look at myself, or personal history. It could be a symptom of mental illness, such as DID, or it can just be a separate problem. And then I also wanted to quickly talk about depersonalization as well. So depersonalization, dissociation, and related experiences can happen for a number of reasons. So this is why it can occur. Obviously I was talking about trauma before. It can come from PTSD, complex PTSD, certain use of substances, lifelong conditions. It can cause worry and anxiety, and the things that can trigger it can be, if you're experiencing if you have PTSD or something, you may be like experiencing a flashback. You may be experiencing really strong emotions or situation that you're not able to deal with. So things that can actually trigger it are sensory stimuli connected with the person's trauma, and dissociation is an overload response. Even years after the traumatic or circumstances have ceased, certain sights, sounds, smells, touches, and tastes can even set off memories and feelings, which can lead to dissociation. Everybody is different, and I just want to say, like, the same thing with trauma, that two people can go through the exact same thing, and one person can come out relatively fine, and somebody else can be like completely destroyed by it, and they can develop like PTSD and they just can't cope, and it's really hard for them. So this is different for everybody. Everything that people have been through is valid, and whatever you've been through is valid. So this can happen for a number of reasons, and it also depends on other factors, not just trauma. Like it can just depend on a lot of other situations. So yeah, I don't know how well this video kind of came across. I'm really sorry. I'm kind of struggling to get my thoughts together right now. Sometimes when I actually talk about this, it makes it worse. Like I'll literally start to dissociate, and I'll be like literally just lose my thought, and I'll be like, I have no idea what I was saying. So yeah, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any other questions, please ask me. I'm not a professional. This is just from my personal experience and from things that I've heard from my friends and other people who have experienced this. And like I said, everybody experiences things in their own way. So just because you may experience it different to me doesn't mean that it's not a legit thing. It's just that everybody has different ways of coping, and everyone's brain responds differently. So that was just my video on dissociation. If you'd like to learn more, just Google it, look on YouTube. There'll be plenty of other information out there, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next video. But before you go, please make sure you subscribe and press the thumbs up, because it would really help me out and make me feel really happy. So see you in my next video, guys.